because, I don't know about everyone in the room, but I didn't realize you could be an archivist until I was a student worker in college, and that felt a
Right.
little in the game. And so for students, I one of the things I do when I'm in front of them, if I have the opportunities, I say, "Hey, did anyone know you could be an archivist when you grow up?" And
Well,
I say,
and
"Oh."
that's part of I was talking about this in the chat. Part of my the reason why I view my job as important to the profession, even though I'm not perhaps working in a public setting, is that the kids that I'm working with will be movers and shakers in the future. And they'll be at the table when funding for archives at university or at the municipal and public level is discussed or philanthropic. And part of the reason our librarian siblings have such a good understanding and societal support is because kids have adults have visceral memories of going into a library as a child. It's part of their childhood, it's part of their understanding of the information universe. Um, People don't often interact with our archival collections until they're in college or they're like doing genealogical research or something. And that connection isn't quite the same. And so my hope is that if I do my job right, that when they get to university, they one, feel super comfortable approaching the archivist or special collections librarian for help with a history paper. And two, when they become adults and they make financial decisions about funding things, and what an archivist does isn't so completely foreign to them. And they'll say, yes, absolutely, that's incredibly vitally important, you know. So that's kind
Well,
of
and
how I look at it.
that you've identified one of the big gaps in opportunity in our field, which is that for, I don't know, the entire history of archives have been set apart and really identified as not for you. And the you is almost everybody in our population. And then you bring in underrepresented groups and it gets way worse. And so that's something that I think is a real growth opportunity for a whole profession to really close that gap and make sure that everyone, and you're spot on, starting at an early age, identifies as archives being for them.
And John, just so you know, in the chat, there's an entire love fest for you happening
Ooh!
right now. And I think someone just nominated you to maybe lead an SSA workshop about this in the future. So if you could mark that on your calendar.
Well, I definitely think that
Save the date.
me and my director, Lakeisha Branch, I mean, would have a lot to, I think, offer something like that. And then we have, I'm not the only one. There's actually a secret Google groups of K through 12 archivists from all over the United States, started by Buckingham Brown and Nichols School in Massachusetts, I think. Um, and there's like that I know of about 60 of us that work from collections where some of us are part-time archivists, then we have like 6 filing cabinets and a portrait collection in a room, all the way up to people like at Phillips Exeter or Phillips Andover that have a museum that deals with furniture collections from the 19th or from the 16th century. And like there's just this huge wide um, base, but all of us have as part of our mission, you know, to be for the mission of the school as well as sort of as an educational resource. Almost all of us. Some of us are more connected to our advancement department than our library department. Um, but I could definitely see a cohort of my fellow K through 12 archivists helping to give, you know, some kind of presentation on that for sure. So I'll keep that in mind.
That's cool.
And there's, I'm going to pivot a bit because there's a conversation happening about, the early career point when you get your degree and what happens when you can't get that archives job. And there was we were talking about Perla, who has a job as a librarian, was talking about, like it's really hard, like, getting into the archives profession can be hard unless you like sometime, it's really weird. Sometimes it's so easy and sometimes it's so difficult. And I actually wanted to mention this because like this this statement is so real, and I've been there. It comes down to, do I want to find experience even though it will be unpaid, or do I want to keep my job that will pay the bills? And that is really my big struggle with the encouragement that students are given to take unpaid internships. And because yes, experience is important, but also I have so much student loan debt because of the unpaid internships. And also I went to a private school and was stupid. My frontal lobe had not fully developed when I started my MLIS program. I did not realize. But anyway, I was actually in a very similar position where I was applying for all these archives jobs. I was like, I want to be an archivist. I've worked in archives. I've interned in archives. I love working in archives. But I had a lot of jobs. I also worked in just in library reference, and I ended up being able to get a reference librarian job. And I will say I keep that job. Do not quit your job. The best job you're getting out of your MLIS is the job you get, because you can advance in that job. And, maybe you won't in a year transfer to, a processing archivist position, or, whatever the entry level archives position is, but maybe in 3 years you will, advance into a management position managing an archives. Because at the end of the day, a lot of these skills are transferable, and you're doing the exact right thing by keeping involved with the archives field. And there are different ways to stay involved with it. That includes, professional meetings like this. There are also just, different, volunteer opportunities and also if you have any kind of outreach role in your library position, there are ways to get archival materials, be a part of that, to be a part of outreach, and also collaborating with archivists. It very much includes, collaborating with people. Maybe you want to publish, maybe you want to present at a conference about different things, because one thing I've talked to my friend Jessica Holden, who I'm going to shout out again because she's incredible. She's a reference archivist, and we've talked at length about the fact that there is so much being published about appraisal, about, all of these different things, but what about reference? That is really important, right? So I think a collaboration between reference librarians and reference archivists, people would eat that up. There is a real need for that. So there are just a lot of different ways to advance in this field without giving up your job for a free internship. That end of my rant.
I agree with that. I mean, I think also it's really tough, but if you're not in the position of already having a full-time library job, but there's a pathway potentially for cobbling together part-time jobs. So, whether it's even, part-time work in a public library on the weekend, or, when I was starting out, I did some volunteer work with reference librarians in the evening shifts. And, first volunteer position in the special collections department was indexing newspapers. So that could be done anytime. So it's a matter of being flexible. And so I was able to obviously still do that on top of my full-time job in another position. So, it is tough. And, as a supervisor who started out in that same scenario, I think we can all acknowledge that. So.
Yeah, at one point I was an actress on a haunted train in French Lick, Indiana to pay the bills. And let me tell you, that killed the part of me that cringes, and I can do public presentations in front of everyone now.
There we go.
So, yeah.
Oh my goodness. I wish I was a fly on that wall. Respect. Okay, well, we have about 5 minutes for final questions, and then I think we need to wrap it up. You guys have been great. This worked better than we even thought it would.
This has been a really amazing meeting, and I will say I'm so sorry that recording started late. I'm hoping that the chat and will be saved and the transcript will be saved because there was a lot of really great discussion happening there. And yeah.
Well,
Thank you everyone
everyone
for your patience.
participating.
Yes. It seems like there's been some, there was a question about creating a mentorship program within SSA, and that's come up before. And I'll say, having been on the SAA mentorship committee, it's a lot of work. And I think that it could be done on a smaller scale, because when I was at Simmons, we had a sort of a mentorship program, but it was like a day in the life kind of a thing where you got to spend a day with somebody, or even virtually, because we did have people on the West Campus that couldn't always be in person in the city. So I think, it's just finding somebody who's willing. We don't have a committee right now that's set up just for that. But if somebody wants to get that started or run it, I would definitely reach out to Robert Weaver as incoming president, so he could start an ad hoc committee just to see how it would work, and then perhaps become a full-on committee doing that work. Or also we could create, there was a suggestion about a message board. We do have forums and a digest on the website that like the Let's Talk archives. We could very much set up one that's for mentorship for people setting those up on their own. So again, just reach out to Robert Weaver with those ideas. And John, I don't know if you saw, but I also posted that if the Professional Development Committee is always looking for people to run webinars and to speak. So please, by all means, reach out to the PDC and they can help you get started with an outline for instruction.
Will do. Thank you. I'll definitely bring that up, and maybe try to bring in some of my fellow more introverted school archivists and see if we can put something together.
Awesome. And on school note, SSA does provide a lot of scholarships for students and new professionals that goes towards attending the annual meeting, or even towards books and professional development. So go check those out. And SLOTO, which if you can access through the lobby of the event, it stands for Scholarships Lottery. That's how we raise money for our scholarships. So if you like, please go over there and check out and contribute. We really appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you for being our host, Melissa. This session went well. Very happy.
Minus the recording snafu, I'm very sorry.
That is no problem.
There's been a lot of lessons learned during this week. So hopefully future hybrid and virtual meetings, we will be able to provide guidelines for those to help people out in the future. So thank you for being our guinea pigs and for being very patient with us.
Well, thank you. This was really, really wonderful. And I am so inspired now. Yesterday morning at this time, I had a really depressing meeting. And I was like, this is great. This one is so great. Now I'm just and I love my job.
Well, it's my time, it's 9:46. It's 11:46 Central. So it looks like we've got a minute over, but I don't know if y'all want to put your emails in the chat for contact or for people to reach out to you, if you're open to that. And then once those are in, I can end the meeting. So at least it's in the transcript and people will have it in the future and in the recording. Okay, I'll just give people some time. And we'll have the recordings available and transcripts after the conference, hopefully starting next week. You'll be able to access them via your Zoom login for this event. And we'll have them just for attendees for a year. And then after that, we'll download them and have them posted to our YouTube channel for all of membership and anybody who couldn't make it to attend or to watch and view.
All right. Thank you so much. You guys have a good day.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Bye.